Hi there. This is Architect David Barcelona. Welcome to Arkida, where you will learn anything and everything about construction. This is part 1 for the Wall Finishes series, wherein I will be discussing about the basic form of walling. Now you would like to have some type of finish that would look like this. These are just plain boards that are painted. It gives out the simplicity, or it shows the simplicity of the space itself. As you can see, this is a 3D representation of a framing. You will see on the left side picture wall studs or other framing members. So meaning to say it can be either steel or wood. Then you have your gypsum boards. On the picture on the right, you can see wall sheeting, meaning to say it can be either plywood, gypsum board, or fiber cement board. With these 3D pictures, you can see, notice the left side picture first. You can see the double top plate. Then you have the interior as taped and painted 1/2 inch gypsum wall board. Then you can include a vapor control barrier. You can include a fiberglass or cellulose insulation. Then you have your exterior sheeting. So this drawing shows you the interior and the exterior portion of a wall. If you look at the lower right picture, it is called a double wall system, wherein aside from the initial frame that you are going to install, you will install a secondary frame, which is used again for exterior and for acoustical purposes. Installing drywall panels, which is also known as gypsum boards, is a project that can seem complicated and tedious for people that don't have the expertise of renovation specialists. However, this process is much easier than it looks. The most important things to keep in mind are that each step should be completed with precision, and that proceeding with caution is crucial to the success of this endeavor. The tools and materials that you need to set up the gypsum board. You must plan the list of tools and materials that are required to install your gypsum board paneling. Here is a look at the items that you may need. First, a level, a drywall knife, a panel carrier. It's useful but it's not necessary, meaning to say this is a small machine that will help you carry several panels at the space itself. A panel lifter, if you plan to work alone, this is an essential tool. Measuring tape, T-square, construction adhesive, a drill with a screw setter bit made for drywall if you are using screws, drywall hammer, inside corner beads, this is for wall junctions, and drywall panels, which is available in 4 by 8 feet, 4 by 10 feet, and 4 by 12 feet. Most common is 4 by 8 feet. Then metal cutters. Now, identifying the obstacles to the installation of gypsum board. The first step is to check the location of the wiring for the electrical outlets. Either it is outlets or switches, the power switches, and the plumbing, in order to limit the chances of damaging those installations, which would cause harm both to your health and to your wallet. Planning the number of gypsum boards you will need. The next step consists of planning the number of gypsum boards you will need to complete your project. Start by measuring the horizontal and vertical area, including the ceiling area. Once the total area has been determined, divide this number by the size of the gypsum boards that you plan to buy. For a 4 by 8 feet board, the area size will be 32 square feet, whereas a 4 by 12 feet board will cover an area of 48 square feet. It is best to mention that the 4 by 12 foot boards are usually the best options, as they will limit the number of joints necessary once the boards have been set up. Please note that when choosing the boards, you should opt for a product that is at least 1/2 inch in thickness. Although I did mention 4 by 8, which is commonly available in most hardwares, you may use 4 by 12 feet. Cutting the panels. To cut the panels, you must use your drywall knife to cut the paper on the boards by following the line that was traced previously. Your T-square will be particularly useful for this step. Secondly, set the panel down on a piece of wood, probably a 2 by 4 inch, and press on it firmly in a quick motion. Run the knife in the indentation, working carefully so that you don't rip the paper. Sand down the sides of the panel several times to eliminate any uneven spots. Installing wall panels. The wall panels should be installed horizontally in order to limit the number of joints needed during the finishing process. In some areas, it is being practiced as it's being installed as vertically, but it is much more practical to install it horizontally. Moreover, you must leave a space of approximately 1/2 inch between the floor and the panel located near its edge. That goes the same thing for the upper portion of your gypsum board, wherein it will be 1/2 inch between the slab of the upper floor and the panel. It is also important to respect the 1/4 inch space separating the panel and the corner of the wall, and to make sure that the gypsum board covers half the surface of the wall beam before screwing or nailing it in. This way you will be sure that the panel is fixed securely. Now, creating the openings for the lamps and the outlets or the electrical panel, take down the specific measurements to determine the exact place where the opening will be made. Use your drywall knife to cut the panel, working delicately to avoid damaging your board. Creating the openings for doors and windows. Before opening the doors and windows, remove the frames without forcing in order to avoid damaging them. This is the frame of the door and the window and not the wall frame. Remove any nails found on the beams, still following the 3/8 to 1/2 inch spacing from the wall. Set the panel on the surface of the beams. You can now create the opening using your drywall knife. Installing the inside corner beads. Now that all the panels have been set up, you have to install inside corner beads for the exterior walls, which will give the panels a perfect 90-degree angle. Start by measuring the height of the wall and cut the inside corner bead to this level using metal cutters. Next, press the inside corner bead directly at the junction point for the wall. Before you fix it to the surface, check that the edges of the panels are smooth enough. Make sure that the inner corner beads is perfectly perpendicular to the ceiling before you secure it permanently. A few important specifications. Although it is possible to use nails to install the panels, it is best to use screws. This is due to the fact that the dilation caused by temperature changes may cause the nails to come out. With regards to what type of screw is best, you should opt for screws that are 1 inch and 5/8 inch thick for a 1/2 inch thick partition, or 2 inch thick screws for partitions that are 5/8 inch thick. When I say 1 inch or 5/8 inch thick, that means that is the length of the nail. Or a 2 inch thick screw, that is the length of the screw. Before you start the work, keep in mind that it is best not to align the joints with one another, as this would create a demarcation that would be particularly hard to mask. The tricky part is learning how to properly bed the tape and feather out the compound to an imperceptible edge. First time out, you'll probably get more mud on the floor and on your clothes than you do on the wall. What is mud? Mud is a type of mixture. Usually it is you use calcimine and primer paint and you mix it and you will come out with some sort of a sticky substance. That is what is mud. So sanding is the other key skill. Joint compound is soft, so the challenge is to avoid removing so much that you risk fraying or tearing the paper tape. Be patient. Even beginners can do a fine job if they take their time. How to finish gypsum board for walls. As you look on this picture, on the upper right picture, that is mud. Meaning to say you can always buy pre-made mud from a hardware store instead of buying calcimine and mixing it with your primer paint. Okay? The first step is to stir the compound and prep surfaces. You cut the band on top of the bucket with a utility knife or tin snips and pry off the lid. If there's water on top of the compound, chuck a mixing paddle into a 1/2 inch drill. Mix at slow speed until water is blended and compound is smooth. If there's no water, the compound is ready to use. Look for any screw heads poking above the drywall surface and drive them until slightly recessed. Tear away any loose or torn paper from the drywall, especially at corners and cut edges, to prevent bits from ending up in the compound. When they say tear away, it means you have to sand it down. Step 2 is to cover joints and screw heads. Using a 5-inch knife, fill your mud box halfway with compound. Load the edge of the knife blade with about 2 inches of compound. Starting in one corner of the room, force the compound into the joints between sheets. When they are completely filled, hold the knife at a 25-degree angle to the surface and smooth out the compound in a single pass. Scrape excess compound off knife and into mud box. Fill screw holes with a swipe of a compound-loaded knife. When all the joints and screw heads on a wall or ceiling are filled, go to the next step. Step 3. Apply paper tape. Unroll 3 feet of tape from the dispenser but don't tear it off. Center the tape over the seam where you have just applied your mud and using fingers gently press into the fresh compound. Unroll and bed tape into rest of the joints. At the end of the joint, place the knife edge perpendicular to the tape face and tear. Step 4. Smooth the tape. Starting halfway along the joint, hold the 5-inch knife against the tape at a 25-degree angle to the wall. This 5-inch knife should already have your compound in it. Pull knife to one end of the joint in a single stroke, smoothing the tape and pressing it firmly into the compound. Scrape excess compound from the blade into the mud box. Return to the starting point and repeat in the other direction. This technique prevents the tape from pulling off the wall. Repeat steps 2, 3, and 4 on the remaining walls or ceiling. Step 5 is taping the inside corners. Using a 5-inch knife, fill the seam and cover 2 inches on either side of the corner with compound or mud. Cut a piece of tape the full length of the corner and crease it in half lengthwise. With knife, gently push into the corner. Starting in the middle, draw the knife along the drywall, smoothing the tape on one side of the crease. Skew blade 45 degrees to squeeze out excess mud. Run the knife in the same way on the opposite side of the crease. Finish by smoothing back to the starting point. Step 6. Cover outside corners. Make sure the metal corner bead on outside corners is nailed or clinched every 10 inches. Straighten bends if necessary with corner clincher. Using the 5-inch knife, smear one side of the bead with compound. Repeat on the other side. Holding the blade against the drywall and bead at the same time, run the knife down the corner, smoothing the compound in a single stroke, then repeat on the other side. After that, you let the compound dry overnight. Now let's proceed to painting. The first step is painting the primer. With everything secure, apply a coat of primer. People often omit this step to save time and money, but that's unwise. Primer helps conceal drywall mud and tape, so it's especially critical if you're painting new drywall. And since new drywall soaks up a lot of paint, applying primer may mean you only need 2 final coats and not 3. Quality primer is also essential if you're trying to cover a glossy finish. Prevent the old color from bleeding through or seal any stains on your wall, including mildew and water. Tint your primer to match your final color unless it's a deep tone. In that case, tint it gray. You cannot match a deep tone paint by tinting white primer because dark colors are created from a clear base, not a white one. And now, after painting the primer, you start now with your final coat. First, figure out if you'll be rolling your paint or spraying it on. Spraying is a lot faster, makes your paint stretch the furthest and covers the best. But you have to really prepare well, thoroughly covering everything including windows and doorways and fixtures because sprayed paint gets everywhere. Proper ventilation is also critical. Next, assemble your materials. You'll need enough paint for 2 coats plus quality brushes and rollers. You have a lot of options when it comes to the type of paint you use on the walls. Flat latex is popular because it's easy to touch up without leaving marks, especially compared to higher sheen paint. However, higher sheen finishes are easier to clean, so people often prefer them, especially for messier areas like kitchen and bathrooms. Satin finishes are good options for most rooms. They are not flat, but not that glossy either, giving them both durability and the ability to mask touch-ups. Prepare your rollers by lightly wrapping them in masking tape, then pulling it off. This gets rid of any loose, fluffy strands on the rollers that you don't want to paint into your walls. Pour the paint into a 5-gallon can with an attached side tray. Roller trays that you set up on the floor spill too easily are often stepped in and are difficult to pick up and move without creating a mess. Ideally, work with one other person. The first person should cut in the edges with a quality brush or roller, painting along the baseboards, ceiling line, and corners, while the second person follows and rolls the main portion of the wall or ceiling. In the local parlance, this is called as cutting. Stay close to each other because you always want to paint over wet edges. If the cutter gets too far ahead and the paint dries before the second person catches up, that may cause banding, which are visible lines you'll notice once the paint dries. The person rolling should work from the top of the wall down, first making a large M or W on a section of the wall, then painting through that section vertically. This helps better spread the paint than simply using straight vertical or horizontal strokes, and reduces the likelihood of seeing lines when you're finished. Let your paint dry at least 2 or 3 hours before applying the second coat. When both coats are dry and you're cleaning up, run a blade in between the painting tape and the walls to cut through any dried drips, then remove. If you don't take this step and just yank the tape off, it may pull a chunk of the paint with it. Well, hopefully you have learned how to install and paint a basic gypsum board for walls. If you'll notice, I wrote gypsum board, but this also applies for plywood. So, see you on the next video. Click the subscribe button to discover all the other videos in this site. Click the notification bell to be notified about new videos that we post. If you have additional comments, please post them down below or at our Arkida Facebook page, and I will answer all your queries. Thank you.